Today I'm joined by Barry Bass. Barry Bass is the founding director of Barry Bass Property, a man of many talents, many skill sets, many spaces in the industry. Just to my knowledge, he's involved in just about every space in the property industry, be that site development, spec building, student accommodation, as well as technical work in the government sector. Believe that to be correct.
Correct.
That's just to name a few. I'm sure you're going to let us know a little bit more about some of the other things that you do, because I know there is more than that. Myself and Barry have been doing business with one another for about 5 years now. The great thing, or my favorite thing about doing business with Barry, is that I always rest assured that he cares that much about his reputation that I never have to worry about anything. And you know, it's always been a matter of being able to count on his word, and I hope you think the same of me. But it's been a pleasure up to this point, demonstrating the commitment to your word and your long-term approach is something that I've always just admired in you, Barry. So thanks for joining.
Sure.
Would you mind, I normally like to just start, because the thing that fascinates me is how someone kind of makes the jump from entrepreneurship, or rather to entrepreneurship, because no one starts as an entrepreneur, or very rarely do they start as an entrepreneur. So if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about how you started and where the journey began.
Yeah, well, it started when I was 23 years old, worked in a bank. At the time it was called, the National Building Society, NBS. And we got recruited there as training managers. We went through extensive training. And where we were exposed to property, they were traditionally bond or building society. So, they would issue bonds to people that, wanted
to develop.
Yes.
Okay.
Build or buy properties.
I see.
And my stay with them was for about a period of 8 years. And there's where the understanding and, I think also the love for property, all started. And I further then moved on in the banking industry, but, always centered to properties. And, bought my first property at the age of 23, sold that.
That was with a salary that you...
That was what salary property is. Made a good profit out of it.
What year was that?
That must have been, in the 90s.
Okay.
The nice thing about property is if you start off early and there's an understanding and, you are focused, you can create a nice portfolio for yourself over a period of time.
100%.
And because, I had the exposure on the banking side, and I ended up dealing with clients, high-end clients. I ultimately became a financial planner, financial advisor. And we were dealing with the wealth section of the bank. So these are your wealthy clients, that has quite a bit of money and assets. And one thing that always struck me was, how well diverse their portfolios were, particularly around properties.
Interesting. And, so when you say diversified, you mean diversified within the property industry?
Diversified within the property industry, but also diversified within, their investment strategies. Okay. They would have very strong property portfolios. And that stuck with me, because there was obviously a reason to it. And, much further on, when I then got exposed practically, your first property, you sell it, you make a bit of money, then is when excitement started and, you go and you commit to another property and I then bought into a townhouse and got that rented. And I also had a very deep understanding of sales within property. And I worked with a lot of agents. My exposure of estate agents were also coming from the banking background, because these were the guys who would bring in the applications.
I see.
And you build up that relationship with them. So it was very easy for me when I started off, where I could basically pick up the phone and phone some of them and ask for advice or help, because there was a relationship.
I see.
And we targeted certain markets, and I would basically buy in cheap and renovate at times, sell at a nice profit. There was a time in the property market where that was booming and it worked perfectly. Up until there was obviously a what do you call it, where the interest rates all of a sudden just
made it not feasible.
Yes.
Talking 2008.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And I sat with a lot of stock, and I could not move it because it wasn't movable. Banks was not lending, and I started to realize that I'm in a bit of a fix. So I then had to let go of some of his properties, some of them at a loss. So for me, it was also a lesson in the market that, not all that is green and gold, is profitable.
Yeah.
And that market changes does affect your pocket.
For sure.
So this made me a wise investor, and also not just to, run at what you can see is making money for you.
Makes sense.
I started to become very selective around my property portfolio and just my approaches to property investment. And I looked at developments, particularly in.
Sorry, Barry, could you just say that again?
I looked.
The truck.
And I looked at developments, particularly in Africa, because it caught my attention. And how that started was I bought a stand, and I then developed it. And after 3 years, I realized that, I'm too far back, in the estate for the type of business that I'm involved in. And by the time I have to respond just to get from where I was living
to
the gate, it was always an issue. So I decided to sell that and build another property. So I naturally bought another stand and started developing on that stand. And ultimately, when I sold the house, I then realized the upside.
That you could
there was value
into the next project.
That there was value to building in Africa. And there's where the development started.
Okay.
And built the first house. I then, had an appetite for buying more stands. I also run an electrical construction company, which is something that I've been involved in for 20 years. That's besides the properties.
And that's both private and government sector?
That's both private and government, yes. And like you correctly said, I was also involved in student accommodation. Student accommodation happened when my sister was working for UJ, and she approached me, and they had a concern around students and accommodation. And I felt I needed to do something, so I identified property because I'm in the property business. I actually bought an existing property, converted it into student accommodation. And then is when the student accommodation business started, where it basically just caterpillared because I just extended from the initial to additional student accommodation ventures. And buying stands made me realize that by building as if you're building for yourself, but also being very decisive and also looking at timelines, that you would actually save money by doing it within a prescribed time. So what I would normally do is if I start the project, I would, for example, give myself between 12 and 15 months to complete it. And I would not, or try not to, go beyond those timelines. Because what I've also learned is if you procrastinate and you take your own time and you want to do it at your leisure, that you're not as committed, and loss of time is loss of money. And with that approach, I've managed to always deliver whatever it is that I've planned to do on time. If I'm possibly late, it could be a month or two at most. But always very particular around what I do and
building something you'd be happy with.
Something that I'd be happy with. And I always have that vision that if I do build, even if it's for somebody else, would I want to live in the house that I built? And if the answer is yes, then I know that I've done
Makes sense.
a proper job. And also, I'm not driven by profits and money. I'm driven by passion and growth.
And reputation.
And reputation.
Big thing.
And those sort of things. For me, it's just so much more important than money. Money for me making money for me is a secondary.
I suppose it's a means to an end, right? You need to do the projects and.
Definitely, yeah. But obviously, coming from a financial background, understanding how to spend, where to spend, understanding timelines. If you do something, do it right the first time. Yes, we make mistakes. I've made a couple of them, but you learn through it, and you don't continue to
100%.
to make the same mistakes. And through my journey, I've met you, and we've built a very solid business relationship. And I must say that, why I stick with you is because of the kind of businessman that you are. And the experiences that I had. You sold my first house.
100%.
And you've continued to sell many others.
Yeah.
And I've acquired many other properties through. And
Correct.
yeah, we are still here today.
No, man, and we definitely appreciate you. And like I said, I think the main reason we wanted to have this conversation is just you've paid your dues, you've learned you've paid your school fees, you've gone through all of the things to get you to the point where you are now. So it almost would be a shame to not have chats like these to hear, how did you get to this stage? And
Yes.
actually, a question that I wrote down was, is there a mistake that comes to mind that maybe you want to share with us in terms of maybe an assumption you had and you acted on an assumption that turned out to be wrong, or something to that effect, or just a general mistake in whether it's investing or business or anything like that?
Yes, yeah. Look, mistakes are always there. And one that immediately comes to mind is, when you under project, particularly when you start off with projects. One would think that I've got enough money to finish off the project.
Sure.
And not really knowing what you're in for. And I think a lot of people are experiencing
People do
that.
that all the time. Yeah.
People do that all the time, and
Especially when material prices go.
yes, material prices go up. COVID happened. I mean, you know, I built properties before COVID. You know, during the COVID period, it was pretty stale, and started to get busy after COVID again. And immediately when you start buying materials, the before and after, it's just completely different. I mean, you know, in certain instances, materials has increased between 25, 30, 40%.
Crazy.
You know, and it's crazy. And, you know, for somebody who has had that break, particularly because of COVID, coming back, you know, you project and you think, you know, I'm okay. I'd be able to finish off this project, and
It's a whole different landscape now.
yes, and I've burned my fingers. Also, not having done my studies around material costs, and the assumption that if it had gone up, it would possibly have been by 5 or 10%. You know, and that's the natural assumption we make,
100%.
and it wasn't the case. So yeah, I ended up losing a bit of money, but you know, in the business game, you make money and you lose money.
100%. So
Yes.
you make it back somewhere else.
You make it back somewhere else. And also, I'm a longer term investor. You know, I'm not in anything over the short term. So I could lose some money over the short term, but in the longer term, it automatically outweighs
100%.
what you've lost.
And I think that's the, you know, when you're talking about the long-term business thing, and you know, in this deal, you're making a loss. And what a lot of people do is they're making a loss. They try and pass that loss on to whether that's the customer or a business partner or a supplier or whatever the case may be. And then, yeah, sure, you've made your money there, but you've damaged the relationships and you've damaged your reputation. So
Correct, yes.
in the long run, you end up being worse off. But sometimes you just have to absorb the knock,
Yes.
preserve your relationship and carry on and make it back on the next deal. But if you try and do that all the time, there is no next deal.
Definitely, and I've seen it all the time. A lot of the people I deal with has got a very short-term view to profit. You know, where they would want to make that money now, and as if there's no tomorrow. And you know, fortunately, I'm a long-term thinker, and my character is otherwise, where I can walk away losing something now, keep a relationship. And like you say, you know, make that same money back over a period of time. And also what business and life has taught me is that, you know, relationships are much more important than money. And that has proven itself over and over again.
Was that something, did you kind of always know that? Did that come from your upbringing, or do you think that's just something you had to learn along the way?
Part of it had to do with my upbringing, in the sense that, you know, I was never somebody that would want to win at all costs.
I see. Okay.
You know,
So it also has to do with character and disposition.
Yes. I would sometimes stand back and let somebody, you know, feel better.
You go on. Yeah.
You know, about the moment, and understand that it's not all about winning.
For sure.
You know,
have to win the war.
Yes. So that, you know, including your experiences in business, you know, helps you to make those kind of decisions where you're aware that it's not always about money, but you know, sometimes you're gonna have to lose a bit, you know, and become a longer term thinker.
Interesting, man. Well, it's nice that you know, because you kind of think, like, everyone sort of knows that, but it's nice to see it actually put into action, where, like, you know, someone who has done all of this also says that. It's not just a nice theory, like, it actually works in practice. So
true.
I think that's why also it's good for people to just hear stories like this and see that people actually do live by this. So I was going to ask you, if you, so I've heard builders say building is secondary, the first thing is cash flow management. And you have to kind of manage, and you've already kind of alluded to that. If you didn't have the financial background that you had, would this have been possible in the same way? Or what other route do you think would have been open to you if you didn't have the financial background?
Yeah. Look, without the financial background, it would have been very difficult. I would have possibly failed dismally. That's just a personal view. I know a lot of people that...
The mistakes might have been worse.
Yes, the mistakes might have been worse. I know a lot of people that have tried this, you know. I mean, there's a lot of people that tries to move into property and make money out of it. And the secret ingredient I discovered is really not you building. You know, it's really having a good financial understanding of what it is you are doing, and also to be backed up, and to know when to buy, and when to start building. You know, simple example is, you know, I've come across people that would build a, you know, you possibly have a 2 million rand investment elsewhere, and somehow you walk into Africa, you love it, and then you have the idea that I can buy the land with about 1 million rand, and maybe build with another million, and that is far-fetched.
Yeah, we hear it all the time.
That is far-fetched. So you know, just understanding your industry, knowing exactly what it is you are doing, what you are putting yourself into, how much money you need to complete a project, start to finish.
Yeah, and maybe build some margin for error in that.
And build some margin for error. I mean, I've made a mistake. Like I've said, you know, the house immediately after COVID, you know, where I had to go and borrow some money from people just to get out of it. But it was a lesson learned, and I don't think it will happen again.
100%.
I know how to pace myself. I know when to start, and I know when to be ready. You know, I won't place myself in a situation where, you know, I'd be stuck and not being able to finish. And so far, it's proven to be right. It works. And I think, you know, you haven't mastered, but at least I know now what it takes from start to end.
100%. Makes a lot of sense. So maybe a little bit of a slightly different topic. When I was doing a little bit of research to try and get some info on you know, the company and the different spaces and that kind of thing, I noticed you don't have, or at least online, you don't have any explicit marketing. You're not spending money, at least online, on marketing, and that tells me that most of your business probably comes from referrals or network or something like that.
Yes.
Can you confirm or deny that?
No, I can confirm that. I've never been a big you know, believer in you know, massive marketing and going out there. And I think that also stems back to the business that I found myself in. You know, I never needed to market myself out there because the kind of industry that I found myself in was a niche market. And, you know, everybody knew everybody in the zoo. And you know, you get acknowledged by a reputation. And I think there is where reputation and if you do something, you do it right, and you stand firm on your reputation. Comes from because you know, your reputation sells you. You know, and that's exactly what I want to do in property developments, where I want to basically be sought after, as opposed to a situation where I need to go out and look for clients to buy my properties.
Very different dynamic when someone approaches you versus when you're
Correct,
approaching
yes.
them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So I think then the product in the case of these houses that you're building, these very high-end luxury houses, the product is almost the advert, right?
Yes.
The product speaks for itself.
Definitely.
People see that,
Yes.
associate the name, and that's kind of all the marketing you need.
Correct, yeah.
And I think a lot of people obsess over this marketing and let's grow the business and do all of that, but are you looking after your existing clients is maybe what people don't think enough about, not realizing that your existing clients is where your next client is going to come from.
Definitely, and also remember, people have, and I think that's also, just mindset, behind marketing, where people would basically blow up that they can do all these fantastic things. You know what I mean? And I mean, from a marketing point of view, you look at these guys and you think, gee, these guys are the end and all of it. But only to find out that if they have to deliver the actual product, that it's not what they've portrayed to you when they marketed themselves. So I actually would prefer to do it the other way around, where your actual work becomes the marketing, 100%. And people will know you through your work, and then you don't need marketing. A good restaurateur, would pride himself through
100%.
The foods and the experience that he's giving people in his restaurant. And he's not the type of guy that will go out there and look for customers to fill his
100%. It's not going to hand out flyers.
Definitely, not at all.
And I think also just maybe further to that is the people, just to use the restaurant example, the people who attend a restaurant like that know people who are likely to attend the restaurant. Right?
Definitely.
The same way when one person, they're similar to the other clients that you want.
Correct.
So you're already tapped into a massive network. And I mean, if you've been in the industry for as long as you have, you probably know one person in every single scene. So
definitely,
you've got a network in
a
just
network
about every
of
space.
people to pull from. Yes, no, definitely, yeah. That's basically how it works.
You mentioned something earlier about how through the financing, you had relationships with agents. I imagine that when good deals came onto the market, because I know personally that if a really good deal comes up, I already have a handful of people that I'll think about and say, okay, this is something Barry would look at.
Yes.
And I'm not going to put it on Property 24. I'm going to call you first. And you'll come through, you'll tell me yes or no. If I've gone through my list of people and all of them have said no, then I'm going to say, okay, cool, no worries, I'm going to advertise it now more broadly. So I'm sure in the past you've had situations where an agent just calls you and says, listen, there's something that's come up now. So again, could you speak to the just importance of having deals brought to you?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I always have this relationship where people will always know what I do. People that I do business with will always know what I do, what I'm looking at. The type of markets that I'm looking at investing in, and I make that known for the simple reason, I know for a fact that if they come across something that I would be interested in, that it would ring a bell, and in most of the instances when somebody does come to me, and I'm in the right space of investing, where I would get involved, because I make it known, and it's people that knows you, and they know what it is that you'd say yes or no to. And that has basically proven itself over and over again. So, I never go out looking for businesses. I network amongst the people that I do business with. And most of the time, most of the deals that I conclude is because of people I know.
They come to you.
They come to me, yes.
I'm a big believer in just, talk about the things you have going on.
Yes.
Because you never know, even if the person you're talking to can't help, there's a good chance they know someone who can. So,
Correct.
so I'm a big believer in just talk about what you've got going on. See
Yes.
how, give yourself opportunities for these things to find you. So that's something that, and just being an agent as well, people have sort of said things to me in passing and I've gone, wait, hold on, actually, I think I have someone for that.
Yeah.
So these kind of conversations and just, have a cup of coffee and a little catch up
Yes.
and see what's going on. So,
and it's amazing what you pick up when you have these small little chats with people, where something that you've been looking for a while, through a small little chat just comes up and, you can connect the dots.
100%.
And that happens to me all the time. So I've become so conscious of it that, whenever I have a coffee or a lunch with or even a breakfast with people that I do business with, I would always let them into what my thinking is and what I think would be the next step.
100%.
And
not sitting there trying to protect all your ideas and keep everything a secret.
And it's amazing what it does. It sells itself because, guaranteed down the line, there's phone calls that will come back to you. And it's normally somebody that would say, you mentioned when we were having lunch that, and there's something on the table, would you be interested? And that's your marketing all there.
Exactly. Yeah, man, business is people first and
foremost.
foremost.
Definitely, yeah.
Interesting. I think maybe to start winding it down, I wanted to ask you, is there any advice you'd give to a young person who is looking to get into the real estate industry, any side of the industry that you think is, a good starting point?
No, definitely. I started when I was young, and my advice would be, that we never too young to get involved in business and really do the big deals.
Yeah.
A deal is never too big, or related to your age. You know what you can bite off or chew, and get involved. Also, with it comes a lot of discipline. With it comes vision. With it comes dreams. With it comes, you need to know what it is you want in life. And if you know what you are geared for, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
A lot of people look at you and they think, you must have done things differently. I haven't done anything differently. My mindset was just one where I constantly reminded myself that, this is where we're going.
Yeah.
And irrespective of the noises and the 120 deals that comes along, because people would want you, you're a business guy, by the way. People would want you to invest in anything that comes along.
Yeah.
But I've stayed true to what I wanted, what I've geared myself to do.
You kind of have to know what to say no to.
Exactly, yes, because otherwise you're going to find yourself all over the place. And you're bound to lose money. And also don't do something that you don't know or don't understand, Get to know the industry or the product first.
Specifics of it.
Yeah. Exactly. And it could be product, it could be financial, it could be information, but, do your research before you get involved in anything.
It's interesting point, and we find this a lot because we sell quite a lot of vacant land, particularly plots inside South Africa, and we have a lot of people who will come and see properties, come and see vacant land, and they will kind of say to us, okay, I want to buy this as an investment, I want to build, and I want to sell that property as a speculative build, as an investment,
yes.
as you've successfully been doing. And I kind of, a lot of the times, I'll have to ask people out of their, for their own sake, like, what makes you think you can do this? and someone will say, no, I'm very passionate about property, and I've got the money, I can make it happen. And I always think to myself, but okay, there's 15 other people, investors, building companies, all of this that
does the same thing.
That do the same thing. Yeah. So why are you going to build a better product? Why are they going to buy your house instead? You need some kind of edge,
correct,
especially in a very competitive market at the moment.
Definitely.
And someone will say, no, I'm passionate and I love interior design, and
it's like so much different.
Yeah, like that's great. It's a good starting point, but if someone comes and says, no, I have a structural engineering firm, and I know builders who can do this, and I can get materials at a discounted rate, and then I'm like, okay, cool, that's fine. Let's chat further. But when someone is just a layman, people get into trouble, and people take serious financial strain on something like that.
It's so true. I've also come across that a lot, where people all of a sudden get ideas.
They think it's easy.
Yeah, they think it's easy. Sometimes they would look at you and say, well, if this guy could have done, what's wrong with me? But, over a cup of coffee, good advice. Sometimes they might possibly think twice, as opposed to being self-convinced and thinking that you're up for the challenge, whereas you're not. And that's how a lot of people burn their fingers, because it's not cut out for all of us. You need to know what you're doing, and there needs to be passion behind.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you also need to think about, you're not just doing the one project. You need to take what you've learned from the first project to do it on the second, because you might only make money on the fourth one.
So true, yes.
Do one, lose money, and then never touch it again.
And then never touch it again, yes. Yeah, and there's where there's a lack of foresight, because, you want to do a property. And if you had to ask the very same person, but what's the bigger plan? They'd be telling you, well, I still need to figure that out.
Like, you shouldn't be spending the money now.
If there's no bigger plan, don't waste your money.
100%, yeah, 100%. I think that's a nice place to leave it. We're going to beat load shedding, so that's good. Still got lights. Barry, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Really do appreciate it, and look forward to doing more deals.
Sure. Definitely.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Cool.